She threw my clothes on the lawn, screaming, "Get out," thinking she destroyed a weak man. What she didn't know, I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. While she was draining our accounts on spa treatments and secret affairs, I was quietly moving millions into untouchable trusts. My name is Garrett Rourke. I'm 57 years old, and I manage warehouse operations for Tri-State Logistics. It's not glamorous work, but it taught me something valuable. Always have contingency plans. I never thought I'd need those skills at home. The explosion came on a Tuesday evening in March. I pulled into our driveway after dealing with a delivery crisis at work. My shirt was wrinkled, my hands dirty, and all I wanted was a cold beer. Instead, I found my life scattered across our front lawn. Brenda stood on our porch in her white bathrobe, holding my favorite coffee mug above her head like a weapon. Her face was twisted with rage I'd never seen before. "Get out," Brenda screamed. "Get out of my life." The mug came flying first, shattering against the concrete. Then came my clothes, shirts, pants, underwear, sailing through the air. My work boots landed with heavy thuds in the flower bed. I stood there in shock, watching 30 years of marriage explode in real time. "Brenda, what the hell is going on?" I called out. "I'm done, Garrett," she yelled, launching my shaving kit. "Done pretending this is a marriage. Done being stuck with someone who thinks bringing home a paycheck is enough." The neighbors were watching now. Mrs. Patterson peered through her blinds. The Johnsons had stopped washing their car. I walked slowly across the lawn, gathering my belongings. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. This wasn't just a fight. This was planned. "You want to know your problem, Garrett?" Brenda continued. "You're boring. Predictable. Every single day for 30 years. I picked up my shirts, folding them despite the dirt and grass stains. Staying calm in a crisis was the only way to think clearly. "I need more than this," she said, gesturing at our house. "I need passion, excitement. I need to feel alive again." That's when I noticed her wedding ring was already off. I loaded my belongings into my car trunk, methodically, quietly. Each item felt like evidence of a crime I hadn't known was being committed. "That's right, just leave," Brenda shouted. "Run away like you always do." But I wasn't running. I was regrouping. I got in my car and started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see Brenda on our porch, arms crossed, making sure I really left. She wanted drama, tears, begging. Instead, she got silence and the sound of my tires on gravel. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time Brenda Rourke would feel victorious about anything. The drive to my daughter's place took 40 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I replayed the scene over and over. 30 years of marriage, gone in the time it takes to throw a tantrum. Sophia opened the door before I could knock. My daughter from my first marriage had always been sharp, sharper than her half-brother James, that's for sure. At 34, she'd built herself a successful accounting practice and never missed a detail. "Dad," Sophia said, taking in my rumpled appearance and the car full of belongings. "What happened?" "Your stepmother decided she needed a fresh start," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Apparently, that doesn't include me." Sophia stepped aside to let me in. Her living room was neat, organized. She got that from me. "I'll put on some coffee. You look like you could use it." While she busied herself in the kitchen, I sat on her couch and tried to process what had just happened. The rage in Brenda's eyes wasn't new anger. It was old resentment that had been building for years. How'd I missed it? "Dad," Sophia called from the kitchen, "you can stay here as long as you need. The guest room's ready." "Thanks, sweetheart, but that won't be necessary." She returned with 2 mugs and sat across from me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've got other arrangements," I said, pulling out my phone. "Your old man's not as unprepared as he might look." The truth was, I'd been planning for this day for 3 years. Not because I wanted my marriage to end, but because I'd learned to read the signs. Late nights, new clothes, sudden interest in finding herself. I'd seen it all before with my first wife. I scrolled through my contacts and found a number I'd hoped I'd never need to use. "Victoria," I said when she answered. "It's Garrett Rourke. We need to talk." Victoria Hendricks was the best divorce attorney in the state, and I put her on retainer 2 years ago. Some might call it paranoid. I called it smart business. "Garrett," Victoria's voice was crisp and professional. "I take it the situation has escalated." "You could say that. My belongings are currently decorating the front lawn, and my wife just told the entire neighborhood that our marriage is over. Perfect, Victoria said, and I could hear her typing. Do you have photos of the property destruction? I looked at Sophia, who was watching me with growing realization. Not yet, but I can get them. Do that. And Garrett, don't go back to the house. Don't call her, don't text her, don't engage at all. Let her make all the mistakes. Understood. I'll file the preliminary paperwork tomorrow morning. The asset protection protocols we discussed are already in place, correct? They are. Then we're in excellent shape. I'll call you tomorrow with next steps. After I hung up, Sophia stared at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. Dad, how long have you been planning this? Long enough, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Your stepmother thinks she just blindsided me. What she doesn't know is that I've been ready for this conversation for 3 years. Sophia shook her head slowly. Brenda has no idea what's about to hit her, does she? I thought about Brenda standing on that porch, triumphant and vindictive, believing she'd just taken control of her life. She'd thrown my clothes on the lawn, thinking she was throwing away a weak man who would beg to come back. Instead, she'd just declared war on someone who'd been quietly preparing for battle. No, I said, setting down my mug. She really doesn't. Victoria's law office was all glass and steel, the kind of place that charged by the hour and delivered results. I sat across from her polished desk at 7:30 the next morning, watching her review the files I've been building for 3 years. Garrett, Victoria said, looking up from the documents, this is impressive preparation. Most men come to me after they've lost everything. I learn from other people's mistakes, I said. My first divorce taught me that lesson the hard way. She flipped through pages of financial records, property transfers, and corporate filings. The warehouse management company you established 2 years ago, that was smart. All your income flows through it now instead of directly to you. My salary is technically consulting fees. Brenda never questioned the change when I told her it was for tax purposes. Victoria smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her. And the house. Never added her name to the deed after we married. It remained in the trust one established after my first wife died. So legally, Brenda has no claim to the primary residence, your business interests, or your retirement accounts. Correct. The only joint assets are checking and savings, maybe $20,000 total. Victoria leaned back in her chair. What about her spending? You mentioned she's been living above your means lately. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots I've been collecting. Spa treatments, shopping trips, that new Mercedes she insisted she needed. All charged to joint credit cards I've been paying off. How much debt has she accumulated? $47,000 in the past 18 months. She thinks it's invisible because she handles the household finances. Victoria's eyebrows raised. She doesn't know you've been monitoring the accounts. I own a logistics company. Tracking expenses is what I do. I handed her another folder. Credit reports, purchase histories, cash withdrawals. She's been taking money out twice a week for 6 months. For what? I don't know yet, but I plan to find out. Victoria closed the folder and looked at me directly. Garrett, I have to ask, why didn't you confront her about any of this? Because confrontation gives people time to prepare. I learned that from my first marriage, too. I stood up and adjusted my tie. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Don't try to change them or save them. Just protect yourself. What's your next move? I'm going to let Brenda enjoy her freedom for exactly 48 hours. Let her think she won. Then I'm going to show her what losing actually looks like. Victoria handed me a business card. This is Carmen Rodriguez. She's a private investigator who specializes in matrimonial cases. I think you'll want to have a conversation with her. I looked at the card. What kind of conversation? The kind that answers the question about those cash withdrawals. Carmen Rodriguez met me at a coffee shop downtown. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. Former police detective, Victoria had told me. Specialized in infidelity cases. Mr. Rourke, Carmen said, sliding into the booth across from me. Victoria, fill me in on your situation. Your wife thinks she just kicked you out, but you've been documenting everything. That's right. What I need to know is where $26,000 in cash withdrawals went over the past 6 months. Carmen opened her tablet and pulled up a file. I've already started preliminary research based on what Victoria provided. Your wife's social media shows some interesting patterns. She turned the screen toward me. Brenda's Instagram account was full of photos I'd never seen. Lunches at expensive restaurants, shopping trips to high-end boutiques, spa days with people I didn't recognize. She's been living a completely separate life, I said. More than that. Look at this. Carmen swiped to a photo of Brenda at some fancy hotel bar, smiling widely with her arm around a man I'd never seen before. This was posted 3 weeks ago, but she tagged herself as being at book club that night. The man was younger than me, maybe early 40s, wearing an expensive suit and a watch that probably cost more than most people's cars. Who is he? Derek Ashford, real estate developer, married with 2 kids. Carmen swiped again. And here's where it gets interesting. The next photo showed Brenda getting out of a black BMW in front of the Riverside Hotel. The timestamp showed it was taken on a Tuesday afternoon when she'd told me she was at her sister's house. How long has this been going on? I asked. Based on social media cross-references and location data, at least 8 months. Maybe longer. I studied the photos, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The sudden need for expensive clothes. The complaints about our boring life. The cash withdrawals that coincidentally match the cost of hotel rooms and fancy dinners. There's more, Carmen said. Derek Ashford is going through his own divorce. Filed papers 6 months ago. His wife hired me to document his affairs. So you already know about him and Brenda. I've got hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even photos of them at a weekend getaway in Charleston. Your wife isn't just cheating. She's part of a pattern. Carmen pulled out a manila envelope thick with documents. Derek's wife is named Maureen Thompson. She's been tracking his spending just like you've been tracking Brenda's. We've got enough evidence to prove both affairs with financial records. I opened the envelope and flipped through photographs, credit card statements, hotel registrations. Everything was documented with the precision of a criminal investigation. What's your recommendation? I asked. Let Brenda keep digging her own grave. Don't confront her. Don't let her know you're aware of Derek. Just document everything and wait. Wait for what? Carmen smiled grimly. For her to make the mistake that gives you everything you need. In my experience, cheaters always do. They get overconfident and sloppy. I closed the envelope and looked out the coffee shop window. Somewhere across town, Brenda was probably celebrating her newfound freedom, maybe even planning her next secret meeting with Derek. She had no idea that her freedom was about to become the most expensive thing she'd ever purchased. 3 days after the lawn incident, I was in my temporary office at Sophia's house when Victoria called. Garrett, she said, it's time to make our first move. Brenda just tried to access your business account. I set down my coffee mug. What do you mean tried? She went to Tri-State Logistics this morning and attempted to withdraw funds as your spouse. When they told her she wasn't authorized, she created quite a scene. Security had to escort her out. Did anyone record it? Better than that. The bank manager called me directly. Apparently, Brenda threatened to sue everyone in the building and accused you of hiding money from her. I leaned back in Sophia's desk chair. Perfect. What's our response? We're filing for emergency asset protection. Her public threats and attempt to access business funds gives us grounds to freeze everything until the divorce is finalized. Within an hour, I was back in Victoria's office, signing documents that would lock down every account, investment, and property under my control. The warehouse management company, the trust holding the house, even the small checking account we'd shared. Everything went into legal protection. How long before she finds out? I asked. She probably already knows. The bank would have sent automated notifications about account restrictions. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Dad, Mom's freaking out. Her credit cards aren't working, and she can't access any money. What did you do? I showed the message to Victoria. What should I tell him? The truth. That his mother's spending forced you to protect marital assets from further depletion. I typed back. Your mother accumulated $47,000 in debt and tried to withdraw business funds without authorization. I'm following legal advice to preserve what's left. James called immediately. Dad, he said, his voice strained. Mom says you've stolen everything. She can't even buy groceries. James, your mother spent nearly $50,000 in 18 months on spa treatments and plastic surgery. She has a BMW in the driveway that costs more than most people's annual salary. She's not exactly destitute, but her cards aren't working because she maxed them out. The credit limit was reached months ago. I've been making minimum payments to keep them active. There was a long pause. Dad, she wants to know if you'll meet with her to work this out. I looked at Victoria, who was shaking her head firmly. Tell your mother that any communication needs to go through attorneys. If she wants to discuss finances, she can have her lawyer call Victoria. She doesn't have a lawyer yet. Then she better get one, because this is just the beginning. After James hung up, Victoria pulled out another file. Speaking of lawyers, Carmen has some interesting updates about Derek Ashford. She handed me a photograph of Brenda and Derek at an expensive steakhouse downtown. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 days ago, the day after she threw my belongings on a lawn. She's celebrating her freedom with him, I said, using credit cards that are now frozen. Carmen estimates they spent $400 on dinner alone. I studied the image. Brenda looked radiant, laughing at something Derek was saying. She'd had her hair done and was wearing jewelry I'd never seen before. She really thinks she won, I said. Victoria smiled coldly. Wait until she tries to pay for her next spa appointment. The call came exactly 1 week after Brenda threw my belongings on the lawn, just as I was reviewing inventory reports at Sophia's kitchen table. Mr. Rourke, said a professional female voice. This is Janet Morrison from First National Bank. We need to discuss your wife's account activity. I put down my papers and walked to the privacy of Sophia's home office. What kind of activity? Mrs. Rourke came in this morning attempting to take out a home equity loan against your property. When we informed her that she's not listed as an owner, she became quite agitated. How agitated? She accused our staff of fraud and threatened to sue the bank. She also claimed you forged documents to remove her name from the deed. I sat down heavily. Brenda was getting desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. What information did she provide during this discussion? She had copies of what she believed were property documents showing joint ownership. However, our records show the home has been held in a trust since before your marriage. That's correct. Mr. Rourke, I'm calling because Mrs. Rourke mentioned that she's planning to bring this matter to local media. She used the phrase, expose the corruption. We wanted to give you advance notice. After I hung up, I immediately called Victoria. She's going public, I told her, planning to claim fraud and corruption. Victoria's laugh was sharp. Garrett, that's the best news you've given me all week. When people make wild, public accusations without evidence, they usually end up looking foolish. What if the media actually runs with it? Then we provide them with the real financial records. $47,000 in debt, a fair documentation, attempted unauthorized bank withdrawals. The story writes itself. An hour later, Sophia knocked on the office door. Dad, you need to see this. She handed me her tablet, showing our local news website. The headline read, Local woman claims husband stole family home. The article was brief, but damaging. Brenda had given an interview claiming I'd secretly transferred property to hide assets during our marriage. She painted herself as a victim of financial abuse, a woman who trusted her husband only to discover he'd been plotting against her for years. The comments section was already filling up with responses. Some people supported her. Others questioned why she'd gone public instead of handling it through courts. My phone rang. Carmen Rodriguez. Garrett, she said, have you seen the news article? Just read it. Good. Because Maureen Thompson, Derek's wife, just called me. Apparently Derek saw the article and completely panicked. He's worried about being publicly connected to your wife. Is that a problem for us? It's the opposite of a problem. Derek just broke up with Brenda via text message. Told her he can't be seen with someone who's making public accusations and attracting media attention. I felt a grim satisfaction. So her attempt to pressure me publicly just cost her the relationship she was planning to build her future around. There's more. Maureen Thompson wants to meet with you. She has some information about Derek and Brenda that she thinks you should know before this goes any further. I looked out Sophia's window at my truck in the driveway. A week ago, I'd loaded my scattered belongings into that truck, listening to my wife scream about freedom and fresh starts. Now she was alone, publicly humiliated, financially frozen, and abandoned by the man she'd thrown away her marriage for. Set up the meeting. I told Carmen. It's time Brenda learned what happens when you declare war on someone who's been preparing for battle. Maureen Thompson was nothing like I'd expected. Derek's soon-to-be ex-wife was a sharp-dressed woman in her early 50s with silver hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd been dealing with liars for a long time. We met at a quiet restaurant outside town, away from curious eyes and local gossip. Mr. Rourke, Maureen said, settling into the booth across from me. I've been tracking my husband's affairs for 2 years. Your wife is just the latest. She opened a leather portfolio and spread documents across the table. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry purchase records, all bearing Derek's credit card signature with dates that corresponded to Brenda's mysterious absences. This necklace, she said, pointing to a receipt from an upscale jewelry store, cost $3,800. Derek gave it to your wife 3 months ago. I recognized the piece immediately. Brenda had claimed it was a gift from her sister for her birthday. How many others have there been? I asked. At least 4 that I can prove. Derek has a pattern. He targets married women going through midlife transitions. Tells them they deserve better, that their husbands don't appreciate them. Maureen pulled out her phone and showed me text messages between Derek and Brenda. The conversations revealed detailed plans for their future together, including specifics about how they'd split the assets from both divorces. They were counting on getting half of everything, I said. Your wife was particularly excited about your warehouse business. She told Derek it was worth over $2 million. I almost laughed. She has no idea what the business is actually worth or how it's structured. Derek doesn't either. He assumed you were a typical businessman who kept everything in joint accounts. Maureen smiled grimly. My husband has always underestimated people. It's going to cost him everything this time. She handed me a thick manila envelope. Financial records showing every penny Derek spent on your wife. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, weekend getaways. It totals nearly $26,000. The same amount as Brenda's cash withdrawals. Exactly. She was using your money to reimburse him for dates and gifts. I studied the documentation. Brenda hadn't just been cheating. She'd been running a systematic financial operation using our joint accounts to fund her affair. What's your proposal? I asked. We coordinate our divorce proceedings. Share information. Present a united front. Derek's been playing both sides, telling each woman what she wants to hear. Time to show them what reality looks like. Maureen closed her portfolio and looked directly at me. Mr. Rourke, I've been married to a manipulator for 18 years. The only way to beat them is to be smarter, more prepared, and completely ruthless. I extended my hand across the table. When do we start? The call came from James at 9:30 on a Thursday morning. His voice was shaking. Dad, he said, Mom's at the house with a locksmith. She's trying to change the locks. I was reviewing warehouse schedules at Sophia's kitchen table, but I immediately closed the laptop. Did the locksmith actually change anything? No. He looked at some paperwork and left. But Dad, Mom's completely lost it. She's screaming at neighbors, claiming you've stolen her house. Where is she now? Still in the driveway. She called Derek, but he won't answer. She keeps saying she's going to sue everyone. I looked at my watch. Victoria was in court this morning, but Carmen should be available. James, I need you to do something for me. Can you record what's happening without your mother seeing you? Why? Because your mother is having a public breakdown that's being witnessed by multiple neighbors. That's evidence we can use in court. 20 minutes later, I was parked at the end of our street, watching Brenda pace back and forth in our driveway while talking on her phone. Even from a distance, I could see her gesturing wildly. Carmen arrived 5 minutes after me, parking her surveillance van, where she had a clear view of the house. How long has she been out there? Carmen asked through her window. James said about 2 hours. She tried to change the locks, but the locksmith couldn't do it without proper documentation. Look at this, Carmen said, handing me her camera with a telephoto lens. Through the viewfinder, I could see Brenda clearly. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She was holding what appeared to be legal documents, waving them at passing neighbors. She's showing people court papers, Carmen said. But from what I can see, they're just copies of old insurance policies and bank statements. My phone buzzed with a text from Brenda. Stop hiding like a coward. Come home and face what you've done. I show the message to Carmen. Should I respond? Absolutely not. Let her keep digging her own grave. For the next hour, we watched Brenda deteriorate further. She called multiple people, each conversation getting louder and more frantic. She tried Derek's number at least 6 times, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Finally, she sat down on our front steps and started crying. That's when I knew it was over, I told Carmen. Not when she threw my clothes on the lawn, not when she screamed about freedom. When she finally realized that Derek wasn't coming to save her, and I wasn't coming back to be her safety net, Carmen lowered her camera. Garrett, in 10 years of doing this job, I've never seen anyone self-destruct this completely. Your wife went from thinking she held all the cards to discovering she was never even in the game. As we drove away, I could see Brenda in my rearview mirror, still sitting on those steps, still holding papers that meant nothing, still waiting for a phone call that would never come. She'd thrown my life onto that lawn, thinking she was throwing away something worthless. Instead, she'd thrown away the only person who'd been keeping her world from falling apart. 6 months after Brenda threw my belongings on the lawn, the divorce was finalized. I sat in Victoria's office reviewing the settlement documents, each page confirming what I'd known all along. Preparation beats emotion every time. Final asset division, Victoria said, sliding the papers across her desk. You retain the house, the warehouse business, all retirement accounts, and personal property. Brenda receives her personal belongings and assumes responsibility for the $47,000 in debt she accumulated. What about alimony? None. The prenuptial agreement she signed in 2017 waived spousal support, and the evidence of adultery eliminated any claim she might have had. James knocked on the office door. My son had requested to be present for the final meeting, claiming he wanted to understand what had really happened to his parents' marriage. Dad, James said, settling into the chair beside me, I owe you an apology. I thought Mom was the victim in all this. What changed your mind? Derek Ashford's divorce trial became public record. The financial evidence showed exactly how Mom was using our joint accounts to fund her affair. She spent $26,000 of her money on hotel rooms and gifts for another woman's husband. Victoria handed James a folder. Your father documented every transaction, every lie, every deception. This wasn't a marriage falling apart. It was systematic financial betrayal disguised as a midlife crisis. Where is Brenda now? I asked. Living in a studio apartment across town, James said quietly. She's working at a retail store, trying to pay off the credit card debt. Derek hasn't contacted her since his divorce was finalized. Through Victoria's window, I could see the warehouse district where I'd built my career. 30 years of steady work, careful planning, and strategic thinking had protected everything I'd built from someone who'd seen it as nothing more than an ATM for her fantasies. There's something else, James said. Mom asked me to give you this. He handed me a handwritten letter. Brenda's familiar script filled 2 pages with apologies, explanations, and requests for forgiveness. She claimed she'd been confused, overwhelmed by feelings she didn't understand. She wanted another chance to make things right. I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in my jacket pocket. What will you do? James asked. Nothing, I said, standing up and shaking Victoria's hand. Your mother made her choices, and now she's living with the consequences. That's how the world works for adults. As we walked out of the office, James looked at me with something that might have been respect. Dad, I never realized how much you'd been protecting us from Mom's spending and decisions. A good man protects his family, even when they don't know they need protection. But when someone declares war on that protection, they forfeit the right to benefit from it. 6 months ago, Brenda had thrown my clothes on the lawn, screaming about freedom and fresh starts. Today, she was working retail to pay off debt while living alone in a studio apartment. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for, complete freedom from me. Unfortunately, she never calculated the true cost of that freedom. 1 year after the lawn incident, I was sitting in my renovated home office, reviewing expansion plans for the warehouse business. The house felt different now, cleaner, quieter, more purposeful. Without Brenda's constant chaos and spending, everything functioned exactly as it should. Sophia knocked on the door, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a folder. Dad, she said, the quarterly reports show the business is up 38% since the divorce was finalized. Turns out not hemorrhaging money on spa treatments and luxury cars is good for the bottom line, I said. There's something else. She handed me the folder. Carmen Rodriguez called. She wants to offer you a partnership in her investigation firm. I looked at the business proposal. Carmen had been so impressed with my documentation and strategic planning during the divorce that she wanted to create a specialized service for men facing similar situations. Financial forensics and matrimonial investigation. I read aloud. Helping husbands protect assets before the disaster hits. She says you have a natural talent for seeing patterns and preparing for problems. Plus, your warehouse management experience translates perfectly to case management and evidence organization. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Dad, Mom's asking if you received her Christmas card. Should I tell her anything? I'd received Brenda's card 2 weeks ago. Another attempt at reconciliation filled with regret and promises to change. I'd thrown it away without reading past the first paragraph. Tell your mother I appreciate her card, but I'm focused on moving forward. I typed back. Are you interested in Carmen's proposal? Sophia asked. I looked around the office that had once been filled with Brenda's, decorating magazines and vision boards for her next expensive project. Now it contained business plans, financial projections, and strategies for the future I was building entirely on my own terms. Set up a meeting, I said. Sounds like there are a lot of men out there who could benefit from learning how to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Through the window, I could see my truck in the driveway, the same truck that had carried my scattered belongings away from this house a year ago. Now it was parked where it belonged, on property that was legally, clearly, and permanently mine. Brenda had thrown my life onto that lawn, thinking she was throwing away something worthless. Instead, she'd given me the freedom to build something stronger, more valuable, and completely protected from anyone who might mistake kindness for weakness. Some lessons are expensive. Some freedom costs everything you thought you wanted. And sometimes, the man you underestimate is the one who's been quietly preparing for the day you finally show him who you really are.